All right. Good evening. As I said in the title, this is part 3 of the videos that I'm doing where I'm redrawing an old drawing from 25 years ago. Let's see here. I want to get to my chat just in case. I've got that up there. Cool. So part 3 today. So I penciled out the entire layout roughly, and I started doing some inking yesterday and kind of got to a point where I had to stop, and I'm going to do some more today. The other thing I want to tell you about is I mentioned my new project, The Just. One of the things that I did today was I did some color mock-ups or some rough color guides. So that's where we're at. We're at the point where we're ready to start coloring the comic. All the pages for issue 1 are done. We have a couple of sample pages that we're going to be very excited to show off, but there are multiple teams of characters, and I wanted to get some again, rough color guides done. So this is one of them. This is the second generation of superheroes. And again, not final colors per se, but just something to give a colorist a rough idea of what to go on. And when you see the character, what are you looking at? Are they red, blue, green, whatever the case may be. So that's that team. And then this is the third generation of heroes and in their costumes and the colors for them. And then there's one more team. I'm not going to show that team. Spoilers. I don't want to give away any spoilers. Which brings me to my next point. I did note that somebody yesterday did watch the video. Thank you so much. And left a comment saying they wanted to see more comic page tutorials. So how to draw comic book pages. And I agree. I really enjoy doing that kind of work as well, and walking through that. It's stuff I wish I had when I was younger. The problem is I'm at a point where, again, if I show you the next page I'm working on, there's some major spoilers for the story, which we don't want to give away. It's one of the coolest things about the Just and the project that we're doing so far is all of the plot twists that happen throughout the story. So this is the script real quick. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So working on the script, I've got several pages here all laid out for what I'm going to do next. So the very last panel of the next page is a major spoiler that I don't want to give away. So I think what we'll end up doing is, maybe I'll show you how I'm going to lay out the page, and I'll just leave that panel and kind of leave it for the end. So that's a way I could do some drawing tutorial without giving away anything good. But here we are for today. Back to this. So I'm coming back in with some pencils. There's a few things that are rough that I'm at a point of getting close to inking that I really need to kind of figure out, such as, what are these sort of recharge cuffs going to look like that go around his hand. I want to kind of figure that out before I start inking. So I know it's going to have some sort of a hinge sort of here, so I'll do something like that, and then some stuff that doesn't really mean anything, just sort of bits and pieces to sort of make it look like something, like it's got some panels or maybe a little some buttons, stuff like that. So then we'll kind of do the same thing over here. And again, just make sure that, trying to be somewhat consistent across, what I'm trying to do. So if it's got one of those things there, it'll have one there. If it's got some buttons in the front, put the buttons in the front, block there. The tube come off, that'll be fine. And then down to the bottom here, let's see. Same thing with these parts that go around his leg. I had it sticking out fairly wide. I'm going to narrow it up a little bit. So I hope everybody who sees this, today is Wednesday. If you watch it on Wednesday, I hope you have a great Wednesday. If you watch it at another time, hopefully your week is going well and you're gearing up towards a good weekend. If you're, I'm assuming most folks who watch the videos are from the U.S. If you're not from the U.S., then this won't really mean too much, but happy 4th of July early. We've got 4th of July weekend coming up here this weekend. So enjoy if you can do it safely. Enjoy time with friends and family. If you're an artist, remember your digits. Don't blow off any of the digits that you use for drawing or painting or creating, so be careful. Little trade secret, some Gatorade. I am still recovering from an illness. This is my second bout with COVID. First bout was around a year ago or so, and this is bout number 2. Much more like a cold this time, and yeah, it's just taking a little while to shake all the symptoms, but that's all right. You know what? That's not what I want to do here. So I did sort of draw myself into a little bit of a predicament here, and that I just pulled all these are all wires that are connected up to it, and I pulled them all to the same spot, so it doesn't really make sense if they would have separate plugs. So I'm going to put them all into sort of one big housing that will then plug in. This one, I'll keep going with the line and it'll plug in separately over there. Problem solved. These, again, so some sort of a square here. So let's see. Yeah. So as I mentioned, it is sort of tough when I'm drawing pages like I am right now with spoilers. I don't want to give anything away. So that's one of the reasons why I don't. I tend not to stream as much while I'm drawing sequential pages, is because I don't want to give anything away and ruin the actual reading experience. But like I said, hopefully I'll be able to work through it, and we'll do something end up being a little redacted. And we'll see how that goes. All right. So one of the things I'll tell you about here today, I just swapped out pens. So if you look at, you can really tell the difference. You can see, if it'll focus, this is the old one, this is the new one. And so the tip really gets worn down on these. I have mentioned before, if you watch my videos, I tend to ink with a very heavy hand, meaning that I press down on the pen to help get me a consistent, solid, and steady line, right? A little pressure down helps me get so that the line doesn't wobble. The problem with that is these little felt tip pens end up being destroyed fairly quickly, and the smaller the pen, so this is the 0.1 micron, so one of their thinner lines, one of the smaller tip pens, it really ends up catching hell the way that I ink. So something to note, if you are like me, and if when you draw you tend to press very heavily down onto the paper, then just be aware that if you're using these, they refer to them as multi-liners. If you're using a multi-liner kind of pen to ink with, you will go through quite a few of them. So just be prepared. The good news is, to date, they're not particularly expensive. You can get packs of them. This is a pack. I got a pack of 6 of these. You can get them at just about any hobby store. You can also, certainly art store. You pay a little more if you go to a premium art store. You can also order them online, I believe. I think probably through Amazon, stuff like that. So those are pretty good. Let's see. So just sort of blocking out, going back in and seeing where I had those shadows and some of the cuts for the musculature of the legs. Again, if you watched any of the earlier videos, I kind of decided that the light is sort of shining down this way. Now, that will come into play. One of the ways that I'll explain is, so the light's coming down. So everything that's underneath that light would be in shadow. And it's a question of how much shadow. So, but what the other part is, as the light comes down, it also, if there's anything below, it's going to reflect up. This is called a double lighting, and it's used a lot. It helps in a couple of ways. And one of the things, because the background, the general background, like the original, is going to be this black. If I just made everything on the figure black to this outline because it's in shadow, then he'd blend into the background. It looked like he was coming out of, say, like out of water, which isn't what I'm looking for. So by using this double lighting effect where I leave the shadow, it doesn't reach all the way to the edge. And so like it's coming down here. So below the kneecap is going to have some shadow, but then it's also going to have, again, some of that light that's reflected back up. It just helps, again, pop it from the background. It helps give it a little more three-dimensionality to the figure, and something to think about, right? So, example, let's see. So, if you have a sphere, see that, and the light is coming, let's say the light is coming from here. So you would shade the bottom part of the sphere, which is what you would expect it to look like, right? The shadow will go down, and then it gets lighter as it gets up to the light source where the light is. Then, what's it sitting on? So if it's sitting on, say, a table, you can still see it, and it may cast it's going to cast a shadow below it. And you're going to do that shadow like that, and you're fine. But what if the background was as dark as the shadow of this? And again, if I don't do some sort of double lighting effect, then you would just shade in this whole background. And now the only thing you're going to see is the top of the ball of the sphere where the light's hitting it. It's a more natural, accurate look. That's what it really looks like. The problem is it's not great for storytelling. It's great for really dramatic effects. If you do have a figure that's coming out of the shadows, sometimes you just have like their forehead and their nose just sort of appear out, and the rest of them fades into shadow. That could be really cool, especially you have characters like Batman or Wolverine or Daredevil or stuff like that, where these characters sort of live in a more shadowy, dark world. That can be a really cool effect of having your characters disappear into the shadows. In this one, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for more of a technical, maybe almost not medical, but sort of laboratory, I guess, maybe idea, so that the background is going to fade away, except for some of the the technical details that we're going to put in, but the figure we want to be front and center. Okay. Get up to these things that we just did. And to be honest with you, this part of inking the just doing the contour lines, so that's the name for the lines that you use to define the shape, or just the outline, if you will, of the form. Contour line inking is far and away the most dull part of inking. It's the part where, for me, I'm already thinking about where I'm going to be adding in, the shadows on the figure, where I'm going to be using my brush pens and adding in texture and fading and that kind of stuff. It's much more exciting. I'm certainly excited about this part. This is the stuff that you have to get through so that you can get to that part. But I think anybody will tell you that this part is not necessarily the most exciting. There's kind of two phases that most artists really enjoy, and that is the initial penciling part, where you're figuring all of it out, right? You're solving that puzzle of where the part's going to go, how is the piece going to work, where does the light go, where does this form go, how does it all connect. That stuff's real exciting. And then that inking part that I mentioned of starting to block in your shadows and your lighting techniques, your rendering, your fading, all that kind of stuff is certainly much more exciting. But we're getting there, one step at a time. And also, hopefully what this would teach anybody else as well is if you're looking to do something quickly, right? If you just want to do a sketch or you want to do a drawing, you've got maybe an hour and a half. Keep your detail to a minimum. The more detail you put in, the more time it all is going to take. And this is certainly not a quick drawing that I expected to be done in a very short period of time. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure when I did the original back in the day, I feel like I drew it and then sort of stopped for a while and then ended up coming back to it at some point, and finishing it later. I could be wrong, and I don't know if that, I don't remember why. It seems that's the memory that I have, is that this is one of those where I don't know if I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with it, or what the situation was, but I feel like I took a little break and ended up doing this one over some time. So who knows? Maybe that's what I'll end up doing here with this revisit, and we'll get back to some comics. Certainly can't take a break on that too long, because the book needs to get done. And yeah, so I am on book 2 of The Just, and that's what we're working on. So I think I mentioned yesterday that book 1 is all of the art is done, the pages are done, and it's 36 pages of fun and excitement and world building and character development. And then I'm on to book 2, and then book 3 is the grand finale of the whole thing. So pretty exciting. Okay, so the main figure is done at this point with the contour. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is a kneaded art eraser. In fact, I need dad art jokes. I need to get a new one pretty soon. Normally they start off, let's see if I have any. I do. They usually start off much lighter color. So that tells you how much graphite, lead, it's not really lead anymore, but graphite has been pulled up by this eraser. And eventually it gets to a point where it doesn't pull up the lines as well. And it's time to get a new one. I did not understand these when I was a kid. I would get these erasers again in the sort of art kits that you would get. You'd have like, a couple different pencils, and you'd have one of these erasers, and I was always like, use this eraser. What is this for? So what this does, and the reason why I'm using it now, it's gentler. It's a little sticky. It's like has a modeling clay, maybe, kind of feel to it, kind of texture. And what it allows you to do is to pull up the pencil lines, and in this case, without pulling the ink up. There are other ways to use it as well. So if you're drawing, and I start drawing the figure, and I make the arm come out, and I go, or I could have done it before I started inking. I could have gone over all of the pencil lines like this very lightly with this, and it pulls them up a little bit. It doesn't erase them completely, so that I could still see the pencil lines. That's one way you can use a kneaded eraser, or an artist eraser. Again, I like it at this stage because I can pull up some of this graphite, so that, being a lefty, I'm not smearing it quite as much all over the page. I can also see where I've missed lines, like I missed one here. I missed a little bit here, and I can go in and fix that now. So you definitely want to reach a point where, again, if your basic contours are done and you've identified where your shadows are going to go, you can go ahead and pull up some of that pencil. So I will go back, before I get into darker inks on this, I will go back. That said, the next step is to start getting into even more of the background stuff. So the tubes, the wires, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to start working on that and blocking all that in. Now these, I'm going to stick to the original. I'm going to make these, I don't know what you call it, segmented, I guess. hoses. So that way they at least look a little bit different than the metal that's on him, because it's got that gap in between. All right. Do that. And again, this is, I'm thinking about on the paper what I've drawn, what's going to be in front of other stuff. And you have to draw what's going to be in front first and then draw through that. So I want to have a lot of wires coming off his head, and I think the wires are going to go in front of this metal tube. So now I'm going to start to do the wires, and I'm going to do like this and make some sort of a little connection thingy. No idea why. Just because it helps break up the line a little bit. It makes it, gives your eye something to look at as opposed to just a line. Maybe it also helps read as technology or cable. I'm not sure. I would say and again, I don't remember the 1997. I don't remember what inspired me to draw this. But just sort of looking at it now, I can imagine that I'm thinking about Barry Windsor Smith. So Barry Windsor Smith is an artist most well known for his work in the 80s. I would say maybe 70s and 80s. Kind of made his claim to fame on Conan for Marvel, starting out, I think late 70s, maybe very 80. But then he did a project for Marvel Comics Presents called Weapon X, which at the time was the definitive story of Wolverine and how he got his adamantium skeleton and his adamantium claws. And there was a ton of this sort of fake technology, sciencey stuff. He was hooked up to all sorts of wires and boxes and cables and things that were supposed to be monitoring his vital signs and helping to program him to be a weapon and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that's some of where this came from. I think Barry Windsor Smith, he also did, I don't know if he did a series, but in my head I can picture, I know he did at least some covers for an old Marvel series called Machine Man. And so if you're not familiar with Machine Man, it was a character. I don't know if he's still around. I haven't heard of Machine Man in years. But Machine Man was a sentient robot who ends up, I guess, becoming a superhero of some kind. I want to say Machine Man probably a Jack Kirby creation from the 70s, I think. So think like sort of Data from Star Trek and Inspector Gadget, because he could stretch his arms and he had all kinds of different little robot gadgets and things he could do. So imagine, kind of combine those two elements and you have Machine Man. So this guy, this robot that can think and feel and is trying to discover, what does it mean to be sentient? What does it mean to be a robot? Versus, is he alive? Is he not alive? People hunting him. He's trying to help people, all that kind of stuff. And Barry Windsor Smith, I know, did at least some covers of Machine Man where, again, there's all sorts of these cables and tubes and wires and stuff like that. And again, I'm sure that was some of the certainly unconscious or subconscious inspiration, if not conscious inspiration for this thing. Uh, yeah, so it's interesting. I was able to go back and I found a bunch of different um, drawings I had done around this time. It was apparently a fairly prolific time for me. I guess, I was 97. I would have, depending on the time of year, I would have just graduated from college and was working but looking for a more permanent job. Um, Probably getting ready to move out on my own. I think, in fact, in a few cases, a few of the pieces I remember where I was when I drew them, and I know I was living on my own at that point. Um, so, probably just didn't have a lot, to do. Uh, I had a lot of free time on my hands and spent a lot of time drawing, I guess. I've always enjoyed sitting in front of the TV and drawing. So obviously I can't do that now because being on YouTube, I would be struck, right? Because you would hear what I'm playing in the background, and they'd take me down. But normally I do have some sort of something going on in the background, be it television, sports, usually not movies, unless it's a movie I've seen a whole bunch of times and I know it by heart. Um, Otherwise, I end up spending too much time stopping and looking up to see what's going on, and I'm not working as much. But typically, I do like to do that, especially if there's sports playing. I really enjoy watching football um, on Sundays, and that's a good time. You can sit in front of the game, listen to the broadcast, hear what's going on. They'll show a million replays, so you can always go back and check and go, what did I miss? What was going on? What was that? And then, which is cool. So football. So I'm sure I was watching a lot of football at this point in time. Um, and then basketball. So I just watched the NBA Finals. And again, one of those kind of things that I can have on in the background. The broadcasters are constantly explaining what's happening. And if something really exciting happens, all you have to do, especially these days, is just rewind, because it's either streaming or excuse me, it's on a platform that you can go back and look at. So I'm sure in 1997 I was sitting in front of the TV working on this original picture, watching something. I guess the question is, what was on in 1997? I don't remember. I know Lost was big, but Lost, I think that was later, closer to 2000s. Lost, I did not start watching Lost when it was on, like, the first season on TV. It was one of the first things I saw on Netflix, and this was before Netflix was streaming. There was no such thing as streaming back then. It's when you would have to go online still and put in what you wanted, and they would tell you, and when they had it in stock, they would send you the DVD. So you would get like a season of Lost on DVD, or half season of Lost or something like that, and watch it on DVD. And I remember doing that until I finally caught up to Lost. But I think, again, I don't think that was 97. That would have been, pretty sure that was later. Like I said, maybe early 2000s. What else would have been 97? Like Smallville, maybe? I watched that. And like I said, of course, sports. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. If anybody remembers what was popular on TV in 1997, I don't recall. Let's see here. So we're doing hoses. Yeah. So as I've been mentioning, super excited about our upcoming campaign for the Just. The book is going to be really good. It's something that Terry Sala, my writing partner, and myself, it's something that we've been working on and crafting and honing for several years now. Making sure that the story is exactly the way we want to tell it, to the point where Terry does rewrites, even up to now. So, recently, I forget exactly what page I was working on, but he was like, "Hey, before you get to page blah blah blah, stop. Let me know, because I want to. I had an idea and I want to change this and this and this." So it's cool that we're able to. There's no deadline, so that we're able to just go in and make it the best product that we possibly can, which is really fun, and is very liberating as a creator. You know, um, I didn't have incredibly tight deadlines on Naughty and Nice, which is the book that we worked on together for Counterpoint Comics. Typically, we had quite a bit of lead time on our issues of Naughty and Nice, but every once in a while we get to a point of, hey, it's been X amount of time, and we want to get this to the printer by next month. Are you going to get it done? And I might have to down to 5 or 6 pages left, so now I got to crank them out, and now I am working under a deadline. The other thing was, of course, we didn't own those characters, so there was only so many things we could do, and we had to get the okay to do them. In this particular case, it's all ours, and so we're able to do exactly what we want, exactly how we want. So again, real exciting, and I'm very, very much looking forward to sharing a sneak peek. So maybe what I'll do is, before I stream again, I'll set up the sample pages that we got colored. So I have 3 sample pages that are going to be part of my for our campaign that you'll be able to see, and maybe I will show those as a sneak peek on my stream the next time that I stream, which will probably be sometime over the weekend. So these wires, I'm going to put a little connection between them there, sort of spider webby. This is definitely one of the things where I do it, and I draw, something that is based off, whatever inspiration it is that I have. So in this case, whatever the original inspiration was. So I start working on that, and I'm like, oh, that'll be cool. Like I'll put, like I said, maybe like Weapon X, like Barry Windsor Smith. I'll have him have sort of lots of tubes and wires and stuff like that coming off, and that'll be cool. And it is, until you realize you have to draw it all, and you're drawing all these little wires and doodads and boxes and knickknacks and all that kind of stuff. And then at the same time, if you decide to color it, then you have to color all of the little wires and things so they stand out from the background. So yeah, it's one of those things that I have done this to myself many times. My inspiration has outweighed my energy. And I get partway through whatever the project is and go, oh, why did I do that to myself? One of the earliest stories, not earliest stories, but one of the stories I have of that I share with folks, usually at like conventions and stuff. One of the first comic books, complete full comic books that I did, I drew with a friend of mine, and he was a writer, and I had done some stuff for him, some designs and some drawings and stuff like that. And he was like, I really want to work on a book together. I want to write a story for you to draw. And I said, that's cool, because, especially at that time, I was like, I didn't know how to write a script for myself. So I was like, yeah, no, that sounds really great. What do you want to do? And he said, well, he goes, let me put it up to you. He's like, what kind of story do you want to draw? You tell me what the genre is, and I'll make it, I'll come up with a story. So in my head, I said, that's great. What a cool idea. What do I want to do? And what I ended up doing was saying, what don't I want to do? And in the end, what I didn't want to do was I didn't want to draw a bunch of cityscapes and cars and stuff like that, because that can be really difficult, especially if you're not comfortable with perspective. Now I'm much more comfortable with perspective. I've done my homework. I've done my studying. I know how to lay out a perspective grid. So a cityscape is much less daunting now than it was back then. Back then I was like, ugh, that's going to be horrible. And I'm not sure how to do it. Today and this was a long time ago as well. So, I have much more, it's much easier to have references. So, when I do a cityscape, I'm going to Google references. I'm going to Google, maybe the angle I want, if it's a rooftop angle or looking up from a city street, stuff like that, to make it that much easier on myself. Now, I'm not copying it. I'm not tracing that layout necessarily, but it gives me an idea of how to angle my perspective, how to, what do the different building windows look like, so I'm not just repeating the same squares over and over, things like that. So it gives me some of those ideas. So that being said, today cityscape is not as hard as it would be. But at the time, I didn't want to do it. So I said, okay, what can I draw? So that kind of takes your modern superheroes out of the story. So I said, how about let's do something like fantasy, like, right, like dragons, monsters, knights, elves, that kind of stuff. That'll be easy. I thought I was making it easy on myself. So in that story, we ended up creating a character who was a minotaur, and with my level of detail that I was doing to draw that character, I would draw all the fur, like little ticks of hair all over. I every castle, I would draw the stones that made up the castle or the wall or the building, whatever it was, and all the little texture and ticks and marks and squiggles and stuff on the stone. And in the end, again, trees, leaves, millions and millions of leaves, arrows. Oh my gosh, I drew so many arrows with little fletching, and it was hard. In the end, it was probably a lot harder than if I had said, I'm going to do, a straight up superhero story in, whatever city and do it that way. But as they say, live and learn. And I did learn. I learned the hard way that sometimes it's not easier to try to get out of stuff. Just learn how to do it the right way. It's actually not that hard. So that's a lesson I would share, is if you think something is really difficult and you try to avoid drawing it, it can come back to bite you. and again, if you want to be a comic book artist, whether it's professionally, independently, especially these days, both are incredibly viable options. Don't shy away from stuff that you're like, I don't want to draw that. I don't like drawing that. It's hard, or it's whatever. Don't, take the time, practice, draw it. It will be worth it for you in the long run to learn how to do perspective correctly that it is to avoid it. And if stuff like cars are hard to draw for you, then practice. And again, nobody should fault you if if your script calls for a guy driving a BMW sports car. Google a BMW sports car and draw it. If somebody calls for a motorcycle, Google that motorcycle and use the image to draw it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. As long as you don't straight up trace the photo and claim it as your own. If you pulled it from a source, credit the source. If anybody asks, admit, oh yeah, no, I used reference on that. But and make it your own. That's the key, right? Is also you have to make it your own. So take that reference and change it up a little bit, but don't avoid it. Rather than drawing, horses, instead of if the opportunity comes for you to draw a Western cowboy type of story, take that opportunity to do it. Get references, get a book on horses, get like I said, Google image search all the cowboy pictures you can, create a file. And if you've got to trace some horses to get it right, trace some horses. No shame in that. Yeah. So that's just my opinion. That's my advice based on my own experience of, man, I tried to avoid drawing something that I thought would be difficult, and in the end made my experience that much more difficult. It was good. I learned a lot. I learned, if I was going to do this, this works as a cover. This works as a splash page. This is not a panel. This is not, I should say, this isn't a panel if you're trying to do a monthly comic and you've got a deadline. You can't keep up this. Oh, maybe you can. If you can, good for you. I can't. I could not. This couldn't be one panel on a page, and I couldn't do 6 of these at this detail level per page, 24 pages a month, and stay on a monthly schedule. It just couldn't happen. So, just realize that when you're doing your character designs, don't go crazy. Don't go and make that nutso design that is really, really hard to draw over and over and over and over again. I've made that mistake myself. It's, again, just makes everything harder, and not a lot of fun. And comics really, are 100% supposed to be fun. Drawing comics, if it's something that you love doing, should be fun. Doesn't mean it's not hard work, but it should be fun too. So, okay. So I've got some more background elements to go, but we're pretty close here to this. I'll probably finish those up off camera. And then what that will leave us with is the next step. And in fact, at that point, before I get into adding a lot of shading and filling in the black areas and stuff, I would actually color the whole piece first. Again, this is something I've learned from the hard way. If I add a lot of black ink, there's a chance that some of it could bleed or smudge with the markers. And so what I've learned is that black ink that I'm going to go in with to fill in the shadows and the textures and stuff will go over the marker without bleeding. But the marker can sometimes blur out or smudge that ink. So I'm going to color it at this stage with the contour line and then go in and fill in my shadows over the top. Again, a lesson I learned painfully through mistakes, and hopefully something I'll share. So realistically, the next time I go to stream, the inks will be, at this point, it'll be ready, and we'll start talking about color. And I'll show you some of the tools that I use to color. And again, my thoughts and practices on what I'm going to do. It will not be Prismacolor pencils like the original was. I'll be using Copic markers, and I'll talk to you about how those work and some best practices there. So again, thanks a bunch for checking out the video. I appreciate it very much. If you do watch the video, please like and subscribe. I'm working very hard on being consistent with bringing you more content, and I will get to more actual comic page tutorials very soon. I promise. I will. I'll do that. Like I said, I'll censor out the spoilers on the next page, and you'll be able to see. I'll do some video of starting from scratch, so laying out the whole page, how that works, how you put it together, laying it out, and then, like I said, just redacting the last spoiler panel. So, thanks a bunch. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you again soon.